Hi everybody, welcome to Zen Wanderlust Travel, where we encourage you to travel the world, find yourself, and live your purpose. And welcome back to the Country Spotlights. As you know, this is a series where I talk about countries that I really love and try to give you a little background and insight into the culture and maybe excite you to travel there and visit yourself, or if you've already gone, to maybe revisit with new eyes and a new perspective. And so today I want to talk to you about one of my favorite countries in Africa and all over the world, which is Ethiopia. As you may know, Ethiopia is in East Africa in a section or a region that's called the Horn of Africa. It's actually a landlocked country, the second most populous country in Africa, and it is bordered by many countries including Eritrea, Somalia, Djibouti, Kenya, South Sudan, and Sudan. And it's a country that's a population of 90 million, approaching 90 million, maybe a little bit more. But it has such a very rich history and culture, which is one of the most amazing and appealing things about the country. And so Ethiopia is also the home of the Blue Nile River. The Blue Nile runs up through Ethiopia. And it's a country that is the home of ancient empires, including the Aksum Empire in the northern part of the country. And that's where you see those obelisk monuments that are actually the prototype for the Washington Monument that you see in Washington, D.C. That was first built in Ethiopia, that model of that type of monument. It's the home of an empire called the Gondar Empire, which was the home of a long succession of emperors that ruled the country. One thing that's very unique about Ethiopia is that it was never colonized by any European power or any European country. There was a time when the Italians tried to invade Ethiopia and they were fiercely fought and beaten by the Ethiopian military. And so that was a victory, and it's something that is a very strong part of the identity of Ethiopians. Another thing is that Ethiopia is actually one of the early homes of Christianity. It was one of the early empires and regions that accepted Christianity, and one of the official religions of Ethiopia is the Orthodox Ethiopian Church, and it's a very unique and very historical expression and practice of Christianity. And so it's also believed, Ethiopians believe, that the Ark of the Covenant is actually in Ethiopia. And so it's a very spiritual and religious country. There's also a large population of Muslims. A little bit less than half of the country is Muslim. And there are other empires, Islamic empires like Harar, that is a historical part in the southern part of the country. So it's a place that is really ripe with history and with culture and spirituality and religion. And that is part of what informs the identity of the Ethiopian people. Ethiopians are very proud people. They have a sense of who they are, where they came from, and what they're about, what their culture is about. And so that's a very fascinating thing to experience. So I'm going to tell you 3 things that I really, really, really love about Ethiopia and Ethiopian culture. One is the music and the dance. Okay, this is just amazing. There's a traditional dance called Eskista, and I can try to show you. People dance with their shoulders, and it's amazing. It's a certain type of traditional instruments like percussion or drum instruments and string instruments that are used to for the traditional music, and singers sing in a certain style, and then people do Eskista either to traditional music or even to popular music. It's really something that people stand in circles, and I'm trying to do it for you like this, right? And people also find a way to dance with their head. There's traditional dance with their heads. It's all so much of upper body, and it's just really it's really an exercise in control, but also letting yourself go. And it's really fascinating when you see traditional dancers who do this. And sometimes with men and women, there's sort of a courtship in the dance where they move forward and move back and really are playful and really in tune with each other. So I think that's really fascinating. Again, the music, there are so many great Ethiopian artists, contemporary artists. One that I love is Teddy Afro. Another female artist that I love is Gigi. So you can check them out. They infuse traditional as well as popular music, and I think you would really love them. So a second thing that I really love about Ethiopia is the food. The food is amazing. If you've never had injera, which is the traditional bread that is used to eat food with and to display food on, then you're missing out on something. Injera is actually really healthy. It's made from a traditional grain called tef, or tef as they say it in using Ethiopian traditional language, and it is really high in iron, and it's used to make this sort of a fermented type of bread that is used to put food out on. So all of the food is put on the injera that's made, and you actually use the injera to eat with your hands, and you eat communally. So very rarely will you see an Ethiopian person just sitting by themselves in Ethiopia and eating on a plate with a fork and a knife. No, it's a big platter where the injera is, and you put the different dishes, the different wats, as they call it, or what, trying to practice my Amharic. And so it's the sauce that's used with berbere, which is a traditional type of seasoning that's made with sort of traditional peppers that's used in most of the food. And you eat it on injera. There are vegetables, there are beans, different types of lentils. Alicha means without the red sauce, and then the lentils with the red sauce are just, they have another name. There's dorowat, which is a traditional, doro is chicken, so chicken sauce. There's tibs, which is a type of beef or meat. And so there's so many amazing food, and the way that the spices are layered on top of each other, you just cannot resist. And there's just something so sweet about eating communally and sometimes feeding your friends as a show of affection and closeness with them. Also, if you like hot pepper, there's always something on the side. There's a little side pepper powder called mitimita, and then there's another one, a pepper sauce that's called awaze. So, you know, those are just a few of the foods, but the thing is that the flavors are just so layered. They're just so rich. And the experience of eating them together, eating communally on a plate and using your hands is just something that you can't beat. And you can always wash it down with a nice cup of tea, spiced tea that has cardamom and cinnamon and cloves and other spices, just to feel really, really good. And so another thing, the third thing that I wanted to say that I really, really love about Ethiopia is the clothing. And I talk about that a lot. You know, I talked about that in one of my other country spotlights, that when I see a society and a culture where they really value looking good and using their traditional clothes. So Ethiopians have traditional dress, traditional cotton weaving, particularly for women. It's sort of a white, natural cotton, and there's this these strips of sort of embroidered cloth that are on the edges, for example, of a traditional dress or the scarf. And it's really, really beautiful. And there are also different colors. Designers are, again, being very innovative, using the traditional woven cotton cloth or material to make all kinds of modern and contemporary designs. But if you're going to go to any traditional gathering, a baby naming, a wedding, a baby shower, a religious ceremony, you have got to have your traditional outfit. So the traditional clothing is just so versatile, and the traditional material cotton is called shemma. And there's scarves without, so usually a traditional dress is called Habesha Kamis. Habesh is a name, a traditional way of saying Ethiopian. And so it's Ethiopian dress. And there's a scarf that men and women wear to cover themselves that's called netala. And so those are just a few of the traditional names for the traditional cloth. Another really fascinating thing about the clothing, which is true for many parts of Africa, again, like I said, the way designers are just using the traditional designs, traditional cloth to really come up with some amazing contemporary designs. And so people are really using both in their wardrobe, traditional clothing and contemporary designs, and mixing them all together for some really innovative outfits. And so one other thing that I wanted to mention, sort of a bonus thing about Ethiopia, is that part of its rich history and culture is that it is the home of literacy in Africa. The tradition is the home of one of the oldest Semitic languages in the world, which is Ge'ez. And so there's actually a writing system that the Amharic language and the Tigrinya language and Tigray languages are that they utilize. So these are written African languages, and they come from a very ancient Ethiopian language called Ge'ez, which is actually the language of the Orthodox Ethiopian Church. And so it's a Semitic language. Some of the words might sound like a little bit like Hebrew or Arabic, but they're not. And the writing is really unique. You've just got to see it. You haven't seen anything like that. And so there's so much more to say. If you go to Ethiopia, there's so many places you can visit. You can visit Lalibela, which is these rock constructed ancient churches from the 12th and 13th century. There's the ancient empire of Gondar, which is in the northern part of the country. There's the Aksum Empire Aksum in the northern Tigrinya region that I mentioned earlier. There is Bahedar, which are these waterfalls, and also sort of the northern part of the country, not far north though. There's the Harar region of the country, more in the south, and that has a very Islamic culture and history. So it's just amazing. There's a place not far from the capital, Addis Ababa, that's called Nazareth, and there are these natural waterfalls and springs where you can just go and shower and clean yourself, and that's really amazing. There's a river, or sort of a river called Langano, where people go, that's about several hours south of Addis Ababa. And there's just so much. So I just wanted to do this country spotlight just to give you a taste of what I love about the food, about the clothes, about the music, and spark your interest to find out more and to actually go and visit Ethiopia. And just the last thing I want to tell you, the reason I fell in love with Ethiopia is I actually lived there doing my research for my PhD dissertation. So it's a place that is dear to my heart. I took the public transportation all over Addis Ababa. I traveled all over the northern part of the country and even went south, and I met up with the legendary filmmaker Haile Gerima there in Ethiopia. So it's an amazing place. And if you go, or if you have been, please comment and let me know what you have loved about the country. And if you want some tips on what to do if this is your first trip, definitely get in touch with me at www.zenwanderlust.com. All right, take care.